Hello, welcome to Two Targets Talk, breaking the silence and the shame of workplace abuse with the lovely Janice White. Hi, Janice.
Hi, Robin.
And me, Robin Barnett. We're talking about speaking our truth, breaking the silence and the shame of workplace abuse. I want to take a moment today to acknowledge we lost two heroes this week, two American heroes, two civil rights leaders, the OGs of the movement, Rep. John Lewis and Gordy Tyndall. And John Lewis happens to be a real hero of mine. I just think he's the most amazing person. And I think this is a reminder to never lose hope, which is what he says, and optimism. And never be afraid to make noise and get into good trouble, necessary trouble. Injustice is injustice is injustice. And Janice and I, that's what we're doing.
That's right. And it brings us nicely into episode 9, which we titled Success is the Best Revenge. We're going to talk today about finding justice and what price you're willing to pay to find it.
Yeah, it's a heavy price that we sometimes pay. And I want to ask you first, Janice, your thoughts. And I know that you fought hard. You decided to fight, correct?
While I was in the workplace, I fought extremely hard, but it carries over to after you leave as well. It was a difficult decision for whether I was going to continue to fight or not. So yes, I remember very well what it felt like to feel I absolutely needed to fight it. Yes.
So at a certain point, what were your thoughts? Did you think about why am I fighting this when you first started? What were your thoughts?
So I hadn't thought of any of it at the time that I was fighting it originally when I was in the workplace. It was almost this natural instinct. I had these very strong beliefs that there was a moral obligation to stand up against what was happening. I felt like I had a responsibility to other people to make sure that I stood up so that other people wouldn't be suffering. It was funny. I remember it was absolutely never, ever, ever about the money, which most targets say, right? They just want to make the wrong right. So yeah, a lot of those beliefs went into it when I was fighting at the time.
So would you mind, how long did you fight for?
Well, I fought in the workplace for 6 months, and I fought so hard. Everyone knows at this point that I quit 6 months later because it had affected my health so much. And then afterwards, I think it took about another 6 months for me to decide that I actually was not going to pursue a lawsuit. So at that point, I had to start finding my own ways of finding justice.
Let's take a couple steps back. When did it change for you? Was it a moment that you realized what the cost was, or what were your thoughts? When did you change your mind?
So in New Jersey, we have 300 days to file a lawsuit. And I would say that up until that point, I definitely still struggled with this moral obligation to take things further. But once I hit that 300 days and I decided not to, and there was many reasons, the lawyer had told me, and we'll get into this a little bit, right? Stats and what a lawsuit is like. But he told me it was going to be about 2 to 4 years. And I just knew at that point my health was not in the place that I could continue to fight. He definitely warned me that there would be a lot of attacks from the employer that would come. I knew my family had already suffered a lot. And I just decided there is no way that I'm going to be able to make it through that process. So that's really, once I hit that 300 days and I was released from not even having a choice to do a lawsuit, that's when I realized, all right, how can I find other ways to find justice? Because there was a part of me that needed some closure, right? And some resolve, all due to some extent. So I had to create my own. What about you?
The same thing, you go through this fight, and I had everyone say, you should sue. And I was like, in 5 years, I could be not here anymore. It wasn't worth the fight to me. I had to find my purpose. And I always talk about choking in my sleep. And once I started speaking my truth and the advocacy and becoming an advocate, well, you know what I'm saying, right? And
yes.
Social justice and just really trying to inspire people, that's when it changed for me. So I want to hear some of the stats. The stats are not in our favor. They don't look good. I want to hear some of them. Why don't you tell us some of the stats?
Yeah, so a lot of my healing process was studying, right? And how can I change my thought process, or what can I learn to help me move forward? So I started studying Rights on Trial. It's a book about discrimination law in the US, because of course we know that workplace bullying is not illegal. And it really helped me to know some of the stats, because I had to say I was pretty naive and ignorant when it came to US law and what the process is like. So did you know, Robin, that only 6% of employees ever make it to the courtroom?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, did you know that for the majority, the average settlement, and this is after sometimes years of fighting, people put their homes up, lots and lots that they're struggling, you're only going to get $30,000. And then after that, you still have to pay your lawyer. Did you know that? That's the average settlement.
Well, I didn't know that, and definitely not worth your health. Right.
And then last stat that I want to share that helped me is that even if people make it to the courtroom, only two out of 3 employees still lose their case.
Well, there's really no law. Your manager can basically treat you any way they like. The workplace abuse is really hard to prove unless it's racism or a disability or sexual harassment, and you have to prove that, right?
Well, these are for people that actually did have a case, right? Because they made it all the way through their struggle, all the way to the courtroom, and still 2 out of 3 lost. So yeah.
Exactly. So this is the best case scenario if you go,
right.
if you fight it. Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
How do you test this outside the courtroom? How do you find it?
Right. That's the question.
For me, it's purpose. What we're doing, it's fighting the injustice of it all, spreading the fact that targets are awesome, trying to help other people not go through what we went through, trying to pass a law in all the states,
right.
the Dignity at Work Act. So that's how we found purpose. And I read a lot of Brene Brown books and Simon Sinek about leadership and, becoming the leader I always wanted to be, and hanging out with you and talking to you 50 million times a week helps too.
Right. That does certainly help, but that helped me too, by the way. Definitely. Yeah. For me, it was a real change in my thought process, right? There's such an individual pressure to right this wrong or to make changes in the workplace that you were individually in. But, the system, to fight the system is so much more gratifying, right? So, and so much more successful. So instead of me being able to fight just for myself or the employees that still work there, now I have the opportunity to fight for real change, right? So for people coming up in the system, because really we realized, when I realized how little power I did have, but how much power I can take back in my own life by creating my own rules and what I want to do and moving forward, that's really where I started finding healing. And there is justice to be found outside of the courtroom by becoming successful, like what the title is, right? And that means a lot of different things to many other people.
Absolutely.
But that is this show. It is fighting for the Dignity at Work Act. It is that I am happy and healthy again, that my family is doing well.
That you are helping people. I mean, when you first, I know we talked about choking and I was on the couch. Helping me. Look at me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your best case, right? Like, one of your best cases. Mm-hmm. We talked and moved me through a lot of things. You helped me find justice outside of the court. And because the system favors the employer,
right?
We want the system. We need you to favor you, Janice, you Target out there, all of us. It's finding inspiration, finding your own success, and moving forward, healthy, living your best life. Yes, I just quoted Oprah Winfrey, living your best life.
And listen,
and
there's
you
so many
get a new
years
car,
left.
and you get a new car.
And there's so many years left to life, right? Like who wants to be wasting them with this ridiculousness when we can? Not ridiculousness. Listen, it's a real thing that happened, and it was devastating, right? But you can move forward and move on without it destroying the rest of your life.
It is I wish we talk about this. I wish we can get people to realize you can move forward and fight, because most targets, it's not about the money. And you're not going to, you know, after all is said and done, why not join us? Join this fight, you know, join us, advocate for other targets. Join us in this fight for social justice. You know, injustice is injustice is injustice. We need to stand up to it, speak our truth. Right. So
I love
what was
that.
our question?
The question for the audience is, how do they define success?
Exactly. How do you define success? Exactly. That's perfect. Let us know how you define success. You've heard from us and our thoughts. Let us know how you feel. And have a beautiful, fantastic week. And targets rock.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.